Fifth pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Julie, please.
Anthony Reynolds.
Here.
Eugene Sullivan.
Here.
Stephanie Euler. Here. Jonathan Smith.
Here.
Brian Venziano.
Here.
Debbie Kowalas. Here. David Hart.
Here.
Aubrey Searway. Here. Hannah Weaning. Here.
Okay, I'd like a motion to approve some minutes. So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Chair has no comments, so we'll move down to the student reports and get them out of here early. This is my favorite part of the meeting anyway. Go ahead, Charles.
This month, Herman High School will host our annual Step Up Day for all of our upcoming 9th graders. Presentations will be led by multiple school organizations, classes, and clubs. March 18th, Jersey will host a blood drive through the Red Cross. NHS and Key Club will assist with these efforts. All staff from the Herman School Department are welcome and is encouraged to donate. Key Club will visit the Humane Society in the upcoming weeks. They are also preparing essays, speeches, and scrapbooks to win awards at DCON.
We had two state champions in track, Deja Grant for triple jump and Ella Johnson for the 800. Boys basketball were Big East champions and sportsmanship award recipients. One Act has their home performance of The Night Witches this Thursday, March 5th at 6, and will present the show at the main drama festival on Saturday, March 7th. And there's a visual art show from 4 to 5 on Thursday, March 5th in the cafeteria.
Sorry, just one more thing. Student Council finished up Spirit Week a few weeks ago, and we collected 450 donations for Shaw's House.
Okay, next, superintendent's report on the budget workshop, and when she's done, if somebody from the crowd has any questions, I'll entertain a few questions that hopefully Barbara can answer.
Good evening, school committee members, good evening, community members, and school staff. In addition to the information that Aubrey and Hannah shared, we also have some students that are being recognized for Student of the Quarter at UTC for second marking period, and this includes Bentley Violette, Christian Nadeau, Destiny Overlock, Jacob Merzin, Justin Largay, and Matthew Piner. Congratulations to those students. In addition to the One Act and the Arts Festival on Thursday, Thursday's a busy night. We also have the grade 2 and 3 concert at the elementary school at 6 o'clock, and the Invention Convention at the middle school runs throughout the afternoon starting at 2:30. Friday next week, Friday, March 13th, our students are home. We have a district professional development day, and our 2 administrative interns, Betsy Trenkman and Meg Barbie, have done a really phenomenal job of arranging for a very nice choice of professional training sessions. So teachers are able to consider their own professional goals and make choices about the sessions that they'd like to attend. And then we also have other sessions that meet district goals and allow us to move our important work forward. So it is my privilege to present our initial draft of our fiscal year 2027 proposed budget. This is the first time that it's being presented in public. We will post this to our district website once the meeting is over, first thing in the morning, so people will have it to preview or review again. So I always like to start with a little bit of a pictograph about what our community represents. And this is Herman School Department by the numbers. If you received our parent newsletter last week, this was also included in that newsletter for you to see. And this is just a glimpse of some of the things that we're really most proud of in Herman School Department. We have nearly 20% of our students involved in JROTC. Our certificated staff numbers number just over 100, but by the time you add in our important custodial maintenance workers, our ed techs, we're creeping up to almost 200 people employed by the Herman School Department, which really makes us one of the biggest employers, if not the biggest employer in this community. We have a very healthy number, 94% of our students graduating from high school each year. You'll see the percentage of teachers with graduate degrees, what post-secondary enrollment is looking like for our students, and then additionally, what our per pupil spending is. And so with that, I'll move into some of our budget information. Just like a good homeowner, I think a budget begins with our goals. And in our case, we have strategic plan goals that the school department acknowledged and approved this past October. And those include that we're cultivating an academic environment for our students that fosters critical thinking, creativity, and innovation. We're energizing our district, school, and teacher leadership largely through workshops, through leadership opportunities for our teachers and for our leaders. And finally, we're ensuring institutional and financial sustainability in the face of economic and demographic challenges. And we work very hard to craft a budget that is prudent and yet also classroom first focused. Our very specific budget priorities for this year include having relevant and appropriately challenging curriculum and programming delivered by exemplary instructors, to have clean, safe, comfortable learning spaces that allow learning to occur without interruption. Our board members will note that we have a number of facility and security upgrades included in our facilities portion of the budget that we are proposing. We're focusing on early childhood education programming. Specifically, this would include a 3-year-old program. Mr. Nason presented information on that last month to our school committee members. At this time, the addition of a 3-year-old pre-K program is largely being compensated by the state agencies, and so staffing, furniture, material costs are not included in the local budget. We are supporting professional learning for educators and leaders through workshops, trainings, and attendance at conferences. We're putting forth a fiscally prudent budget that addresses educational and facility needs. And finally, we're focused on having appropriate support for all learners, including academic, behavioral, physical, and social emotional interventions as needed. So I think if we're going to talk about budgeting, we should be also looking at the number of students that we have in district. And this is our district enrollment and a look back over the last 4 years. We are in a period of declining enrollment. I'll also be able to give you more specific school numbers as we get to those pages. But we project for our elementary school 432 students. That does not include the 3-year-olds, of which we have been told to expect between 5 or 6 students for next year. 341 students at the middle school, which is an increase over where they are now. There's a very large 4th grade class moving into grade 5 next year. And Herman High School stays steady at 521 students. This is another way to look at those numbers. So you see the decline coming here. Now, granted, the line looks like it's a significant decrease, but you're really talking 9 students from 2025-26. So when we see a decline in enrollment, it's not that we get suddenly 10 fewer students in grade 3 or 20 fewer students in grade 7. It's really a few here and a few there, which makes it a little bit more challenging to plan for staffing, and we want to make sure that we're maintaining proper and appropriate class sizes so that we can individualize instruction, differentiate instruction, and ensure our student success. This is a look at total per pupil expenditures, and this is for the fiscal year 25. This is directly off the Maine Department of Ed website. The state average is on the far left, at $21,717. Herman is the next bar in, the lowest one, at $16,478. And then you'll see the amounts from surrounding districts like Bangor and Hamden and Orono and Brewer. So some people will look at that and think, well, you know what, you get a great bargain when you're at Herman, and you do. We have exemplary education. Our students are doing incredibly well. There are lots of opportunities for students, whether they are college bound, whether they're military bound, whether they are directly into business. We run an extremely lean program. That means that we are, in most cases, one person deep or 0 people deep. And then we have teachers who take on lots of other responsibilities. Our professional development over the past several years has been rather curtailed, with limited opportunities for staff, except what has been stipulated in their negotiated contracts. Our middle and high school book closets are in need of enrichment, and our curriculum resources are meeting state standards, but we certainly are desirous of taking it further than that. This is what our state aid has looked like, again, as a look back. So we have just over $200,000 more coming in this year for fiscal year 27, and we're certainly grateful for all of the aid that our state provides to us. And finally, one more bank of numbers. These are tuition rates for secondary school students, and this is for FY26. Committee members may recall a meeting or two ago you actually approved these in the budget. I'm going to point out a few things here. The state average is $15,055. We aren't the lowest, but we are rather close at $11,949, and this is actually a decrease. And that decrease this year is costing us over $259,000 for a decrease in tuition. A little bit later in the presentation, I have an explanation of how the state determines those tuition rates so that you'll understand how those numbers are applied to us. And I hope to impress upon you that when we begin to make cuts in our schools, particularly at the high school level, this is one of the areas where we see it, and it's not helpful to us. This is our budget history with a look back to 2021-22. So for my friends in the back row, in 21-22, the school department had a 5.38% increase in their expenses. In 2022-23, that was an 8.89% percentage increase. In 2023-24, it was an 8.76%. 24-25 was a 3.55% expense increase, and last year, Mr. Walker was your interim superintendent who put forth the budget, and that landed at 4.38%. So let's take a look at some things school by school. The box on the right, the graph on the right, shows you, again, where we project enrollment to be. And now instead of seeing it as just a school, now you're seeing it broken down by grade level. And this is actual students in seats that we're just growing up into the next grade level. So I'll call your attention to current year 2025-26 with 98 fourth graders. And those fourth graders are going into the middle school next year. The incoming is 72. So that's largely where you see that decrease come in. On the left-hand side, I've indicated the staffing for 2026-27, including the addition of another preschool teacher. As I noted earlier, that position is funded by the state agencies. The budgeted numbers here for the elementary school do not include salary and benefits. They include the transfer of one teacher to Herman Middle School for grade 5. They include 2 intervention teachers and 1 ed tech, and those folks are covered under Title I federal funds. And I'll speak a little bit more to our entitlement grants a little bit later. This includes instructional resources for science, social studies, math, and English language arts. It provides for the implementation of our grade 4 band program, which the school committee approved back in January. And as I said, the pre-K teacher is not an increase to our local budget. That's handled by the state. At the middle school, we have, again, attendance on the far right side. So whereas we have 75 students now in grade 5, you're looking at really a whole nother class of students at 98. The staffing that we're projecting for 2026-27 is on the left. And while we're maintaining 4 core subject teachers in grades 6, 7, and 8, that influx of students really requires a 5th teacher in grade 5. The budgeted numbers for the middle school, again, do not reflect salary and benefits. It includes sharing 2 teachers from Herman High School for middle school chorus. That's budget neutral. It includes all the instructional materials necessary for another section of grade 5, and it supports all co-curricular and athletic programs. Here's our high school numbers. So as we look at 2026-27, you'll recall that the high school is staying stable in their total student enrollment we project for next year. One of the things that I think will be important to look at is what the high school numbers will look like in the future. And I've indicated for incoming grade 9, we anticipate close to 152 ninth graders coming in for 2027-28. That's both the current 7th graders in our middle school chorus. It supports all co-curricular and athletic programs, including increases in officials fees. And this particular high school portion also includes new auditorium sound system at an estimate of about $50,000. This is the cost center that most of us see when we look at a budget for a school district. This is the way the state wants us to include our numbers. So I've given you what the fiscal year 26 budgeted numbers were, what our proposed fiscal year 27 numbers are, the dollar change, and the percentage change. I want to point out, and your eye is probably going to it, that we have a rather significant increase in special education costs. Special education costs are driven by federal and state mandates. We are legally required to provide a free and appropriate public education to our students based on their individualized education programs. We're also seeing a trend of more intensive student needs. Providing these specialized services, whether they be speech therapy or behavioral support, really requires special services and special experts. When we cannot meet a student's needs in district, we need to pay for specialized instruction and transportation out of the district. And these costs have risen significantly nationwide when we're looking at private school tuition and tuition in schools that specialize in special needs students. And so this budget also reflects those market realities. Finally, our committee members are aware that transfers were required in special education accounts last year to offset deficits. The fiscal year 27 budget accurately represents the needs of this department. Another way to say that is that with this number accurately portraying what our needs are, you should not be seeing, and we should not be bringing to you transfers among different account numbers to make up for things that perhaps weren't adequately budgeted for. So the number at the bottom right-hand side indicates a 4.05 expense increase over last year's budget. Let's take a little further look at what that includes. So this is a look at the budget by area. And many of those little pie slices are really tiny. You've got Durham School in the dusty rose. The orange is the high school. The next largest one is facilities, and that's 6.6%. And the largest piece of the pie is always our payroll and our personnel, and that's 80.4%. To give that to you in another way, total salary and benefits in the fiscal year 27 budget is $17,224,370. This represents a 3.57% increase over fiscal year 26, and it represents approximately a 5.3% increase in teacher salaries. If we look at payroll as its own chunk, 73% of this is wages, with the next largest chunk, almost 20%, being our health insurance costs. And these numbers are not specific to Herman. This is typical not only of Maine, but of states across the nation dealing with increased health insurance and benefits costs. Another area that we receive some support from is from our federal entitlement funds, and I wanted to break this down for you. On the left-hand side are the title funds. This includes Title I. Title I Part A provides financial assistance to districts and schools with a high percentage of children from low-income families, and the goal is to help these children meet academic standards. For this past school year, because the funds are allocated and we apply for them over the summer, and then the money is made available to you at a compensation rate or a reimbursement for that fiscal year. So the numbers you're seeing here are for the current school year. Title I funds provided Herman with $235,000 and $15. Title II Part A is allowed to be transferred into Title I, and we do that. So there's $20,000 there that we moved into Title I. Title IV Part A is also allowed to be transferred into Title I, and that's just a bit over $26,000. So the combined total for the above funds, $282,000, covers salary and benefits for 2 literacy intervention teachers and 1 math intervention ed tech 3 at our elementary school. Title V is designed to meet the needs of rural school districts that frequently lack the personnel and resources needed to compete for federal grant opportunities, and that's just under $6,000. And we're able to make use of that for some staff training, some curricular needs there. On the special education side of the formula, those are the IDEA funds. And again, these are current 2025-26 numbers. Just under $300,000 in IDEA funds for Herman School Department, and that amount of money offsets 1 self-contained teacher in the fiscal year 26 budget and 3 self-contained ed techs in the fiscal year 26 budget. There's also a small amount of money that comes from preventing student homelessness, a little over $2,000, and we also make use of that to support our students who are unhoused, whether it be helping them with school supplies that they're lacking, aiding families in transportation to bring them in for school conferences or school concerts. So if we take a look at our revenue budget comparison, because I've shown you where our spending is going, and now let's look at what money is coming in. You've got the source on the far left, fiscal year 26, so you have a comparison, and fiscal year 27. And I'll draw your eye to a few things. When it comes to state subsidy, that's that very top line, we did receive more money, as I indicated earlier, over $200,000 from the state to put forth for our budget. And the local required, which is a formula that the state provides, the local required is also a little over $250,000. And then you see the rest of the breakdown there. You'll notice tuition revenue shows a decrease. And this is where that tuition number starts to show itself. I'm going to flip to the next slide just for a minute and then I'll come back to this. So what's tuition revenue and what's this all about and why do we have a decrease? Well, for the fiscal year 25, our tuition number determined by the state was $12,293. We saw a decrease in that for fiscal year 26 of $11,949. That's a difference of $343 per high school student. How does the state compute that? Well, essentially they take, at a public secondary school or high school, they take the sum of all of the expenditures and they divide it by the number of students that we have. So they're looking at expenditures for our high school from the period of July 1st to June 30th of the year immediately before the school year for which the tuition charge is computed. And it does not include expenditures for special education, career and technical education, community services, major capital outlay, debt retirement, and then tuition and transportation. So essentially, what programs do we offer? What staffing do we have in our high school? What's the total cost for that? We divide it by our number of students, and that's how the state essentially determines our tuition number. So if you play that out a little bit further, when you have a reduction in the number of students, you'll naturally see a reduction in your overall tuition, right? Because the math tells you that. When you make significant decreases in your high school portion of the budget through decreasing staff, decreasing programs, that impacts your tuition. Because even if you're dividing by the same number of students, you still come up with a smaller tuition, and that's where we are here. So if I come back to this slide, you'll see that our tuition revenue is decreased by, oh gosh, over $200,000. If we look at the fiscal year 26 budget, as you come to the very bottom, the district chose to designate reserve funds in the amount of $375 to offset some of the missing revenue. And then the town provided an additional $2.495 million to make the school department whole. When we look at our revenues for fiscal year 27, while we do see an increase of 1.5% over last year's revenue, it still gives us a shortfall of over $3 million. So our revenue is the $18 million number. And then on the right-hand side, I've given you a reminder of what our expenses are proposed for fiscal year 27, and that's the $21 million number. And your pie chart on the right gives you another picture illustration of where those funds are coming from. When it comes to undesignated fund balance, we've made no decisions on that at this time, but this is a look back to see where the school department has landed. And one of the things that will become glaringly apparent, and it was pointed out by our auditor at our meeting and at the meeting for the town, is that our fund balance is declining. And we're not anywhere near the 9% that the state allows us to keep. So if you equate this to being a homeowner, and although the numbers are certainly inflated from what we would have as homeowners in our savings account, but if in a school district with 3 school buildings and 1 school department office and athletic fields and staffing, and if we have $1.5 million in our fund balance and something disastrous happens that we need to replace a roof, a portion of a building, that goes away pretty quickly. So when we look at highlights for this budget, we have been able to, within our just over 4% increase, we have been able to support all of the things that were listed in our district goals at the beginning of the school year, including expanded band, chorus, and art experiences for our students, including supporting curriculum enrichment per our curriculum renewal schedule. This current budget includes one additional special education resource room teacher, purely driven by student numbers at Doran Elementary School, and it includes several facility enhancements, including school security hardware, school security technological infrastructure, a new audio system, as I indicated earlier, at Herman High School's auditorium, a new bus lift for the garage, interior and exterior door replacements, replacing the gymnasium lights with LED fixtures, replacing a hot water tank and piping, and replacing fire pump systems. A look at where we've been with our budget process and where we're going from here. Our finance committee has been meeting through their monthly meetings to really review the numbers, review the presentation, and have it be as ready as possible for our school committee meeting tonight. We've also had informal meetings with our town council representatives, and I'm grateful to Brian and Tony for joining me in those meetings. It's provided some really healthy conversation and helped us to understand where we feel we need to land in presenting a budget not only to our community, but also to our town leaders. Tonight is the first reading of our budget. On March 12th, our budget will be presented to the town council. It will come back again on April 6th to our school committee for a final presentation and a final budget workshop with the town that same week on April 9th. As we look at this budget, while we do see a decrease in our revenue, or at least a shortfall that has increased over last year, we've worked hard to find internal efficiencies in operations and administrative costs. Last year, $375 million in designated funds were allocated to fill the revenue gap, and the town provided nearly $2.5 million in local additional funding to make us whole. This budget is a reflection of our community's values. It ensures that every child, regardless of their starting point, has the resources that they need to thrive. And despite external economic pressures, we've prioritized a classroom-first spending that ensures that any impact from our budgeting, any decrease, any cuts that came before you saw the budget this evening are not impacting our students' daily experiences. A strong school district is the single biggest driver of local property values. And as we saw from the original photo, the picture at the very front, there's a lot to be proud of in Herman. In addition to low budgets, despite our revenue issues. This budget protects the long-term investment of every homeowner in this town. It maintains our commitment to a safe learning environment, including building security upgrades, a school security officer, and school counselors. As we met with our town officials, they told us that the number we've landed at with 4.05% is something that at this time they are comfortable with, and they understand the revenue shortfalls that may need to be also addressed by the town. Certainly, we have other conversations coming up with them, and I'll be presenting to the full town next week, and the full group may feel differently than the folks that we were meeting with in our small meetings, but that's where we are just now. I will open this up to our school committee members first for questions or remarks before we go to the rest of the audience.
Mine is just a simple high-level one. Is there going to be a vote that you're asking for this first reading from us committee members?
So I'm going to ask, because I want to understand the rules here. Is it required that an initial first draft reading receive committee approval, or is this for informational purposes only?
I mean,
That's a good question. I mean, this is a proposed budget, but we kind of at least need somewhat of an answer to go in front of the town council with a number.
well, thank you for thank you for all the hard work that's gone into this budget, and thank you for giving us the answers for the questions that we had a couple of weeks ago. But as I mentioned, as it stands, I cannot support this budget. I understand it to be all the wishes, so to speak, of everyone, and I would ask that it be reduced. And I know there's been additional numbers that have been provided from a member of the Finance Committee surrounding that.
If it were to be reduced, is there a particular area that you would look at to say maybe we could cut this or that?
So let me answer, and thank you for the question, by saying, first of all, this budget as presented does not include everyone's wishes. There were a lot of things through our budget process of meeting with the principals and meeting with our budget managers that we said no to. So there have already been those cuts made that brought us into 4.05%. We didn't just land on that our first time through happily and by accident. Depending on the, Mr. Sullivan, depending on the full committee's recommendation, certainly we'll go back through and look to see if we are able to realize any further savings. My concern, as I indicated in the presentation earlier, is that the lower we go with our budget, that begins to impact our numbers in what the state sets for our tuition. It gives us less to grow on for coming budget years, and it really at some point becomes unsustainable for us as a school community. If we were to go much deeper, you saw 80% of our budget is personnel and staffing, and when you're looking to make significant cuts out of a budget, you're looking at either facility needs or you're looking at staffing, and at this time I'm not prepared to recommend either of those.
And when you mention the tuition rate, correct me if I'm wrong, that's at the high school level, correct?
That's the secondary level.
Yeah, I mean, they've always done an amazing job in the past of really cutting down, and I have appreciated that.
Do you agree that based on the presentation of the auditor that we should leave the undesignated fund balance alone?
I do.
So that's the plan, is don't touch that.
That's my plan right now, unless you all tell me differently.
And do we have a plan for reserves?
What I think we'd like to do as a finance committee first, and reporting back to the school committee, is understand where we are with that. Typically, it's not until after June 30th where we recognize what our actual unexpended funds are, and then we can make decisions about what we can put into our various reserve piles, whether it be capital reserve, whether it be fuel oil, supplies. We can make those decisions once we have a better idea of where those numbers will land.
Keep going, yeah.
How accurate, this might be unfair to you because you haven't been here that long, like last year, but do you know how accurate the projections are that we're looking at? Are they typically on point? Or?
I'm really comfortable with these, having done budgeting in lots of other school districts. I'm also, one of the things that we've been providing to the finance subcommittee has been tracking our spending as compared to last year. That's that line graph that our committee members see when you see the finance committee notes. And that's a good indicator for me that what was budgeted last year and what we're spending is pretty on target, and I'm comfortable with the numbers we proposed here, that they're accurate, that they'll support the programs that we have going on for students, and that they meet all of our contractual obligations.
And then I got one more. So last year, I guess there was a projection for the director of curriculum for X amount of salary, and then that position got cut in favor of 2 administrative interns, which saved a ton of money, I think. But then I don't know. I have some trouble following where that goes. Like, did we end up spending that savings, or did that go somewhere else? Or?
So the salary that was set aside for the director of curriculum, because of the unfortunate passing of that staff member, we at first tried to hire for that position, were unsuccessful in doing so, and then fell to the unique opportunity to have 2 administrative interns at a stipend, which was a significantly lower cost. I think you're asking, where did the rest of that savings possibly go? And I can go through that with Jamie and get that to you at a later time.
I guess a comment. We're down to $16,478 for per pupil expenditures, and the state average is 21. I think the Herman School Department over the years has done a pretty darn good job. I think our budget is fairly close to a skinny budget. I certainly don't think there's a lot of waste in it. We could nickel and dime it, I'm sure, and save a little bit of money here or there. But we have a huge revenue problem. I don't have any fixes for it. I'm not sure you people do. I'd love to hear it if you do. And we're going to have to ask the town for help. Or you're going to have to cut a bunch of teachers if you want to. I mean, if you want to cut this budget $1 million, you do have one option. You could take money out of the undesignated fund balance. We've been doing it for years. I hate it. I don't think it's right. I don't want to do it. But you could take $500,000 out of that budget and not hurt the kids. But you're just passing the buck down the road. Next year, you're going to be in way worse trouble. That's my thought.
I guess I would ask the question, years ago, it was mentioned when the turf was going in that there was going to be revenue generated from that. I even remember one of the coaches. And so I guess I'm wondering where that revenue is going from the use of our facilities, because it's really pretty minimal, $3,000.
Well, that's the town's track. It's not ours.
The turf?
Yes. No, the turf's ours. The track is the town's. And that's $500,000 a year for 11 years. 10 now, maybe 9. Not sure.
And I would caution us when we talk in those terms, when we try to compare our student ratio with other schools' students ratio, because we do things very differently here. Our track, most of our sports complex is not in this budget. Most of our middle school athletics, such as a football team, track, I believe the track team and cross country, it's not in this budget. It falls underneath the rec program. So we need to fully understand that when we say, well, we've got the lowest per student cost in the region, there's also a reason for that. Our cost is deferred throughout the town in other ways. So I throw that out there as a caution that we're not actually talking apples to apples on it. There's a different variable there that we don't see.
Good point. Gene?
Can we be more proactive with advertising the ability to use our facilities? Kind of related to what Steph was saying, like a 3,000 projection. Just seems like we could probably make more money if we were more proactive with it. I don't know. Do we know the impact of the mill rate with this?
The mill rate is determined at the town level, and Mr. Fields, the town manager, always indicates that that's not a number that he calculates until later into the summer. I think to be aware of our facilities use, first of all, our season for using the turf is limited, and we have very active and vibrant teams in the fall and in the spring that are using those facilities. We also have, through our own district policy, language that allows our rec programs to use our turfs if it's for student use or students in our community are benefiting. We don't charge for that. We have a good partnership with the town in that aspect. So you're really looking at outside for-profit groups to come in and use the fields. And by the time you look at our own athletic schedule and the rec athletic schedule, there's not a lot of free dates on the calendar for someone else to come in and rent the facility. All right, everybody, I will take.
I'll weigh in on my opinion of it. I agree with Mrs. Euler. I don't support this budget based on revenue. I think expense-wise, I think you've done a very nice job of putting the expense piece of it together. So a 4% increase on expense overall, an initial blush is not that, it doesn't draw that much attention. What is the real hook for me is there is a significant increase on the revenue side required from the town, which isn't very palatable to me at all. And that is why I don't support the budget the way it is. Again, it's based, just like last year. We ran into the same problem last year. So I know it's not you, Dr. Sargent, that we ran into a revenue problem, not an expense problem. And we're here again. And I think this year, if we, just as Tony said, we can try to kick this down the road again by going into reserves or unfinanced balance. But it's not going to fix the problem. I think this is the year that we need to make the hard decisions on these things. And that's why I don't support it. And what is important for everybody to focus on is that local additional line. It's up near the bottom. And it's a number we don't like to consider, but my stubby pencil comes out to be a $1,166,898, which equates to a 17% increase to the town to balance the budget the way it is currently written. So just so we all where we're at with it. And I appreciate the towns talking with us over the last 2 months, but that's the hard number for me, and that's why I don't support this budget as presented.
Anything else? Thank you, everyone.
Well, I'm going to ask if we have any questions from that, because this is kind of like what we promised way back when, that we'd involve the people. So if anybody'd like to get up and speak on what you think about the budget, or if you have any questions.
Jason Forbes, Town Council, Town of Herman. I thank the individuals for talking about the budget and thinking about the townspeople. I'd like to clarify something. Dr. Sargent, thank you for the time you put into this, but to say that this is accepted by the town is not true. I am one of the councilmen. This is the first time I've heard of this evening. Haven't been made council to come in here and talk about this. There's been multiple times that times and dates have been misconstrued to us to come in and meet with you. I've sat out in this parking lot twice at night for an hour and a half with this place being empty when I was told to be here. So no, as a council member, I don't agree with this budget. I don't accept it. I personally don't like you talking for me, because I'm not okay with this. And you're talking as a whole as they. I am one of they. I'm not okay with this. I'm part of this community. I'm representing my constituents. Lack of revenue means lack of spending. When you don't take in enough money, you have to spend less. Yes, there's going to be some cuts. We have a 25% increase coming from the county this year. It's going to be the biggest increase we've seen ever. We thought last year was bad. This proposal is going to drive us through the roof. And then your people are going to drive out of town. Well, your population is going to drop in the school, which the state's going to change the population. So it's just going to perpetuate. We need to stop spending the money. Have you looked into the school buses going with SEER? You're not going to have to buy a lift. You can get rid of the mechanics. We're not going to have to pay for the fuel. We're not going to have the expenses of fixing buses. You don't have to put aside the money for buying a new bus. These are all things we need to think of. We need to cut back instead of saying, well, this is what it's going to be. It's going to be. I think it's going to be probably a very good learning experience for the children to see that you have to save. It's an economic thing. It's a classroom for them. You can't have instant gratification. They have to see what's going on in the community. Everybody has to have a sacrifice, including our children. I'm not saying take things away that's going to hinder their education, but they don't need to play steel drums. Nobody's living in Jamaica here in Herman, Maine. I mean, there's some things where we need to put funds in certain areas and take away from others. And I just, nuts and bolts of it, black and white. There's no gray area with me. We have lack of revenue. We have to have reduced spending. And I don't like being spoken for. I'm not okay with this, and I don't like being talked about as a whole. Thank you.
Mr. Forbes, just for clarification, on the school side, the time, dates, and locations were clearly communicated.
They were not. You want to see my text messages?
I'm saying on the school side, the time, dates, and locations were clearly communicated. So what happened within the town, I can't speak to.
It's between the town and the superintendent.
There was no gray area on us on time, date, location. So
Brian, the superintendent came up to me at the last meeting and verified my email address and told me, maybe you haven't checked your spam account. I've checked it every day. There's another counselor that can't be here tonight, said the same thing to me when we were talking on the phone this afternoon. So it's not a town thing we don't know. It's not a miscommunication thing, it's facts.
I will disagree with you on that.
Okay, you agree with what you want to agree with. Facts are facts.
Mr. Ford?
No, I'm done. Thank you for your time.
What? No, I just have, really?
Okay, no, Tony, go ahead, Tony.
No. You probably didn't hear Mrs. Sargent, but she said we met with 2 of the council members, and those 2 would not decide on this budget. It goes in front of you
What
guys.
she said was they were okay with it.
They were okay with us bringing it to you guys. This is a proposed budget. We're not spending any money here tonight.
Mr. Reynolds,
You're the
this
one-
wasn't proposed to the town tonight. This was proposed to you.
We're,
What she said to you in her proposal to you was that we were okay with it.
no.
That's misconstrued. I sat right here and heard
She
it.
said those 2 people were okay with it. And your town manager was okay with it.
Tony.
I was at the meeting.
Tony, you've been on the council, you know how it works. I am not
certainly
okay with
do.
it. I'm not okay with getting talked about as a whole. I have a vote. You always had a vote. Nobody ever talked about you and your votes. I'm not a gray area guy. I'm black and white, period.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak?
Haley Keyser Herman. First of all, I don't have the numbers because I didn't have, this wasn't posted online that it was going to be available, nor was the information. I'm not really sure why the school committee or the superintendent is posting this information after the fact, when we're supposed to be coming to be well-informed per policy and per law. We were supposed to be well-informed in coming to the meeting, so we have something to offer. So not having the information makes it difficult. That being said, what was the actual expenditure total for last year?
Last year's expenditure is in the FY26?
Yes.
FY26 budget?
I know 25 June. 25 June total expenditure. What was the total for that? I don't have the audit with me, so.
So you're asking for FY25.
25's total expenditure for the year.
That's,
I don't have, I have fiscal year 26, I don't have 25.
Not, we're in 2026, so we haven't spent this year. What was the actual in the audit for 25? What was the actual expenditure total?
That I don't have in the presentation.
Jamie?
I don't know the number off the top of my head, Haley, but I can get it for you.
Well, I could have sat here and looked at the internet and looked it up. Okay. That being said, you're presenting an overview of a budget, not an actual, so we have no idea as constituents what exactly or where the money's going. So we can't be well informed or come and bring anything to the table. You are being non-compliant, as this town councilor was sharing. These meetings are supposed to be open. Before you came along, they were always open. They should be open to allow public discussion, to allow us to be hearing what you guys are discussing, even though you may not be allowing us to participate, which is what eventually happened. We want to be a well-informed community so that we can work together. Many hands make light work. All of you are elected and you're supposed to represent us. Often that's not the case. So having your budget meetings be in secret, you're no longer posting them, you're no longer posting the information. Sometimes you post the minutes, but you make us use an email to log in to even get the information. I mean, it is such a hoops to get basic information, it's ridiculous. You're saying you're budgeting or you're allotting per federal for the 3-year-old preschool, is that correct? But that's not in the budget, you're using federal funds, is that right?
So the state set out a requirement that by the fiscal year 28, all schools need to provide services for 3-year-olds with special needs. And they've created a cohort pacing guide. So we've elected to begin bringing in 3-year-old students with special needs for the 26-27 school year. And in doing so, the state is providing us with reimbursements for the cost of a preschool teacher and classroom furniture and other needs to staff and support that room. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily coming from the main DOE, it's coming from the state agencies that up until now had been providing the services for that age child.
Thank you for the clarification because it's very distinct. Number one, for years, I've only been here 6 years, and all I've heard every single year is we have a shortage of space at the elementary school. Where are you planning on putting these 3-year-olds?
We've walked the building with Dr. Davis, and she's identified a classroom where this would go.
You stated that these are for special needs 3-year-olds. Can you define or more clarify what you mean by that qualification? What's qualifying that? Are we talking autism or are we talking medically complex?
So these are actually students that are identified by the state. Right now, birth to age 4, students are handled through the state agency, and the goal is to have the 3-year-olds now be serviced by their local school district so that they are more apt to be with generally developing peers, so that if a student is in a daycare, that we can either include the student for part of a day in our programs here, or we can provide services to the child in their daycare setting. But it's the state that really identifies and provides the diagnosis.
Can you just clarify that last statement? So did you say we could provide care for them at their daycare? Did you say that?
So one of the things that the state will allow for with 3-year-olds is that if a family determines that either because they need full day care or they choose not to send their child to the public school 3- and 4-year-old program, that we are able to look at what the needs of that child are and then provide service in there. So for example, if a child is identified by the state at age 3 as needing speech services, perhaps the family doesn't want that child to be in our 3-year-old program. They'd rather keep the child in a daycare facility that they're comfortable with, or perhaps there are siblings attending. And so the school would be allowed to provide services in that setting for the amount of time that's necessary.
So that's different than a teacher. Speech services would be a speech pathologist versus an educator, is that right?
You could say that.
So when we're talking about federally funding a staff member, are we talking about an educator or are we talking about speech? I mean, I feel like I'm getting mixed information. I just want to be very clear because although it may not be in our budget right now, someday it probably will be. So I'm just trying to understand. I work in this field, so I'm pretty familiar with it, and I'm just trying to better understand, also understanding the restrictions of our teachers, staffing, and understanding the demands that are going to be on them. It sounds like I'm not hearing a need for education. I'm hearing a need for special needs services. Is that right? Or
we have advertised for a pre-K teacher for the coming school year.
Okay. Do you know the ratio that these teachers are expected to be managing?
Not at this time.
Is the state standardizing what that ratio should be for that teacher?
There are ratios as to the not only the number of children that can be in that space, but a ratio of teachers to children. But because the 3-year-olds are still being identified to us, and because some 4-year-olds coming in don't go to a 3-year-old program, we know that in our elementary school, the 3- and 4-year-old classes typically fluctuate.
Okay.
So we don't have specific ratios at this point.
I mean, medically complex children are demanding, and I can't imagine an educator. I mean, you said there was how many? 6 roughly identified children that might. So I'm just trying to figure out the ratios of how the educator is supposed to manage all that. Payroll. So you mentioned in your presentation about payroll and an increase. I'm always confused by this because payroll is something that is contractual. It's already allotted every single year. You know the maximum of roughly what that's going to be. So I'm always curious why it's so much higher in your budget than what's actually contracted. Can you explain that? So didn't you say it was over a 5% increase, yet the contract is far less for our educators?
What I said was that the increase in payroll is 3.57% over last year. And that if we look at teacher salaries alone, which is a negotiated number, that represents approximately a 5.3% increase.
The budget is going up, yet several staff last year we were assured that we're not going to be cut. Yet it turns out once the budget came to pass, several staff members were cut specifically from the high school. We had guidance counselors that were cut. There was all sorts of reconfiguration. Some went to the middle school. So when I keep hearing the budget's increasing and yet we're promising or we're making these statements about staff not being cut, but they ended up being cut, I'm just curious, how are we still increasing this while also losing staff from last year? The math just doesn't math to me. And I know our actual, I don't know why everyone in this room can't even look up while we're waiting here for the actual expenditure of last year. Those numbers should be available. That's public information. Look up the audit for the town to see what the actual was. Why are we continuing year over year to have this massive surplus of unexpended funds, yet our budget keeps going up? I can't make that make sense while we're also cutting staff. So are you planning on also cutting staff to make this budget work again?
So the school committee and I have had conversations about areas where we could gain efficiencies.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any direction of where that might be or which building or what that might look like?
I'm not prepared to discuss that publicly at this time.
Okay. One of the statements that was made was about the athletic funds that Mrs. Euler loves to bring attention to the athletic fields and the blessings of our town. That being said, the Greater Herman Athletic Complex Fund Group, whatever, is supposed to be a funding source for raising money and continuing to fund and maintain those properties. And she makes a good point about revenue. Now, granted, we have a set amount of, $75. So renting out our field for $75 doesn't make any sense. There's two ways that I see creating revenue. One, using the Greater Herman Athletic whatever funding sources that they want to bring in and donate to maintain those fields. The second is signage and marketing. That was supposed to be part of raising funds for our school, so we're not asking the taxpayer as doing, I'm not sure why that isn't being utilized. That was something that Josh Berry, when he was a town manager, was going to utilize and try to look into using advertising as a means of revenue. Is that something that you guys are working on?
All I can say at this point is during my time here, I've had no such request for advertising.
My last question is, the budget you said is going to be proposed to the town council. It's unfortunate the town councilors that are here, I thank them for coming and being involved. Are you going to make that budget available in the actual line item numbers for them? It should be available to the community. I have this battle every single year, and I would like to say I look forward to it, but I don't. Are you going to make that at least available to your town councilors so that they can look at it?
We will be sharing that with Mr. Fields to share with the rest of the group.
Within 7 to 10 days before their meeting so they can be well informed, or?
We'll be sharing it with Mr. Fields so he can share it with the rest of the group.
Thank you.
Haley, you want your closeout number?
Excuse me?
Do you want your FY25 closeout number?
Yes, please.
Budgeted FY25, $19,728,262.97. FY25 closeout was $19,470,254.53.
Thank you, sir.
Danielle, go ahead.
Danielle Herman, thank you guys for allowing the community to be involved in this process. I genuinely appreciate it. And I know it's really tough because we're in a situation where it's a financial big hit to the town. at the same time that we have the county having a huge financial hit, and the town itself, who's honestly sacrificed for years, is also going to have a big hit. So we've got a triple threat coming when it comes to budget, and that's why these discussions are important. I do want to give some history about the unassigned fund, because I feel like it's portrayed as we were being irresponsible for the last few years, and I think that some history is very important. In 22, we were substantially higher than the 9%, and we had 3 years to correct that. And in addition to that, it was supposed to change, I believe, in this fiscal year to 5%. If it wasn't, it was this year, Brian said.
Yes.
So I was on the committee for years as a counselor, and so back then we started putting us back on track to be on 5% for this year, so that we were coming into compliance with the 9 years you have to spend down in 3 years. So in 22, we would have to spend those funds appropriately in 3 years from 22. And then we were also having to land at 5%, because at the time that this year's budget went into place, the law was changing to 5%. After the budget was approved, the law was changed to stay at 9%, and that's why we're at 7, because we were going on track for 5, but they changed it from 5 to 7, and so 5 to 9. So now we get to go back up. So I feel like it's been portrayed that the school and the town have been irresponsible, and I do not believe that was the case. They were following the laws that were in place at that time. I hope that's helpful. Maybe it was a waste of time, but I just wanted to share that. I was curious if the position reductions that were discussed during last year's budget, if they did go into play this year, if the head count was reduced by, I think it was 4, but I can't remember for sure. So I was curious if that change in head count for staff did take place or not. I appreciate, Brian, you mentioning it's apples and oranges when we talk about cost per student, because in Herman apparently we do funny budgeting, and some school stuff ends up on the town side and some of it ends up on the school side. That said, gross math will tell us we're still at the bottom, so I do acknowledge that. But the numbers are not apples to apples. I am curious in this budget, Dr. Sargent, if you don't mind me asking her directly, how much of this budget that's being put forth is actual capital expenses versus operational expenses? I couldn't read the screen.
Danielle, while Dr. Sargent's looking over the numbers, the town has an enterprise fund for the rec committee. So we're talking about getting money expenditures from the town and then trying to figure out what we're going to do here. So the town ends up with a lot of money. They charge the parents for the football teams, Little League, the whole works. The town gets that money. Also,
They also pay for the staffing,
I
correct?
realize that.
Okay, just checking.
And no, I'm not. I'm just trying to make a point where they do make some money. We have an after-school program. It's run in the schools. The town gets some money. You know what I mean? We pay for the heat. It's fine, because it really doesn't matter if it's us or the town that gets it. But you should just know that some of the revenue is going to the town, and they help with that to offset their budget. So.
And I'm not disputing that. I think when we look at the loan that we have taken out for the athletic complex, I mean, that's a substantial amount of money. In most schools, that would be included in their cost per pupil. In here, it isn't, because it's falling under a different cost center or business line. So.
And something I try to tell people.
And it's still, I'll admit, it's still low. I'm just saying the numbers.
Right. But I also try to tell the people that Herman is in fantastic shape. We don't have a whole lot of bonds out on, $80 million schools. We're in great shape. So this stinks that we're in the position we're in, but it's not the end of the world.
Agreed.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Barbara.
If we go back to the pie chart that indicated what portion each of the various budget areas had, facilities comes in at about 7%.
And is facilities the cost center, or is it capital expenditures?
That I don't know. I'd need to break it down
Okay.
with the finance director.
Okay, thank you. I would be curious on the next presentation, how much is operational versus how much is capital expenditures. I do want to give kudos to the committee, and Jamie. The cost center summary report that you guys is awesome. Knocked it out of the park with the encumbrances and the estimates. Thank you. I noticed on February's, it looks, if I'm reading it correctly, and I might be reading it wrong, it looks like we're on track to spend 90.8% of what we budgeted for this year, which if I'm reading it correctly, it looks like there's $1.5 million in this current budget that we're currently in that we're projected not to spend. And I was curious if that is the tracking of it.
So
am I reading it right?
we're earlier in doing this than we have. We started doing this, I believe, last year, and we're earlier in that process. So I am still working with the building levels to find out what we're still missing in that
Still dialing it
encumbrances
in.
column. So we're still trying to dial that in, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's really kudos to you guys. The other thing is the track with enrollment. It looks like in 2022 and on, it looks like from the ED 279 that we've lost about 90 students. And I know, contrary to that, our budget has gone up, partially because we're a district that spends less than other people, I'm sure. But I'm curious how we're taking that into consideration with the planning. I know you mentioned next year the high school population is planning to go up. But I'm curious overall the population of our students. And then I was really happy to see the high school tuition calculations being put back on the front and center. I think last year it kind of fell by the wayside when we were doing the budget process. Not blaming anybody. I think we had how many superintendents and everything going on, so it was hard, but I'm happy to see that that's back on the front burner. Those are my comments. Thank you.
I had just a couple things I wanted to say to you, Terry Hamlin-Norris. I'm on the town council. In going over the budget is not detailed. The budget is an overview, in my opinion, as we looked at it. Because I don't know how many rolls of toilet paper you buy, how many, chairs you put in the classroom and things like that. I don't have that information. You do. So we don't have. I understood from Stephen Fields, the town manager, that we really are just allowed in on this process to look it over, and we really don't have so much to say about it. For example, one of the things that I was thinking about is when you were talking about the state paying for the 3-year-old students who have special needs, and they said they would supply, they would pay for a teacher. Well, that's the first year, right? That's the first year that program's in place, that they pay for that teacher?
That's correct.
Do they pay for the rest of the time?
That's to be determined by the state.
By the state. So we don't know whether we're going to have to pick up the full-time cost of that program or not, eventually. So also in defense of the schedule, I missed a meeting because I misread the time of the meeting. But it came through for the town councilors on our computers in an email, and if you don't look at your town computer, you're probably going to miss it. And there were a couple date changes. I missed a meeting last week because I was thinking the meeting was a little bit later than it was. Now it's 5 o'clock, and at one time it was 5:30. So, and I also came here the first week. So there was, I was a little bit confused, as were others apparently, but I did make most of the meetings. So the time and place of the meetings, I thought was fairly clear, but like I say, I missed one because it was my fault. I assumed that I was just thinking that the meetings start usually at 6 or 6:30 and not 5:30 or 5. So I had that question about the new mandate that the school has to pick up. The state has said they have to pick up 3-year-old special education students, about the instructor, whether that teacher's going to have to be added to the budget, like so many of the teachers that were added when we had all this money in the unassigned budget, added quite a few extra teachers, temporarily supposedly, but they ended up being permanent, which added to the budget. And that was before you came. Didn't have anything to do with you. And the unassigned balance funds, we had 22%. My first year, was it 3 years ago? 4 years ago, we had the unassigned balance funds were 22%. And so the town sent the budget back. I wasn't on the town council, but I think they sent the school budget back and said, you saw that money, or find a way to use that. Because that was quite a high rate. They called it COVID money. Yeah. So then the next year, it was less, of course, but they once again contributed to the budget. For those 2 years, it was almost $2 million. The people in the town didn't have to pay because that money was available. And it was more than the town was going to allow them to keep the school to keep in the budget. So, like you said, I mentioned that I thought it was lower than the 9% that you mentioned, because as Danielle said, we thought it was going to be lower, but now it's back up to 9%. So that money at times has been lower, and probably could be lower, but I understand why you like to keep the extra there, and I'm sure I understand that you don't know how much money you're going to spend for the whole year until the end of the year is over, so you can see what you've spent. So it's hard to make a determination that you're going to have 10% of your budget left over. So, as I say, the details aren't clear to even the people that are sitting on the school finance committee when you come in. The real details aren't clear. Like we go through the town budget with a fine-tooth comb, but we can't do that with your budget because it's not open to us to do. So that's a problem that I think that we should be able to see everything in the budget, not just the overview of the budget, if you want us to make a decision on it. I mean, everybody comes in and says 4% is fine, but I'm wondering, I kind of am happy that our school expenses per student aren't any higher. There are a lot of people in this town who don't have children in the school, never have, and a lot of people are having a tough time to pay their property taxes, especially with this. We've had the unfunded balance has not been available after last year, and then this year we have this huge increase from the county taxes are going to be quite a bit more, and so every year it seems to be something else. Hopefully not next year, but we'll see, I guess. Anyway, those are some of the things that I was concerned about. I really would like to see more detail in the budget, to be honest. And I didn't know that I was, being kind of new to the town council, I didn't know that should be available to us. Or maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know.
So the plan was that once the school committee had the opportunity, because last month we were missing some members, so we made the decision not to do an initial draft presentation of the budget at that point, out of fairness to not having everyone here. So tonight we have everyone here. They've had their budget books for a bit. After tonight's presentation, our town council representatives will get the same budget books that our school committee members have.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd like to say something on the undesignated fund balance. Nobody did anything wrong by using the undesignated fund balance, but I think some people think they did. I would have preferred to not spend as much down so you'd have a little bit of a buffer later on. You know what I mean? But that's just my opinion.
You had to spend it.
Well, we had to spend some, but now we've spent down a lot. So, but that's fine. It saved people from paying taxes back when we.
That's my point. They don't understand that.
But now we're at a little bit of a cliff here, and we're having a few problems, and I wish we had a little bit of that money back then.
No.
To your point, the preference was to put some in the reserve funds at the time, but the superintendent at the time refused to do that. So the only other option we had as a community to rectify the income in compliance with the law was to spend it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we do now? We need to decide what we want to put forward to the town, correct?
I need direction from the full school committee as to whether we're making further changes or whether we work with this first and go to the town next Thursday and await their input.
I've already said my opinion. I'd like to see further reduction.
So approving first read doesn't mean edits couldn't be made or reductions couldn't be made. It gives us a starting point for those additional conversations.
I think we're gonna have to show as much detail as possible. I think it's gonna be a hard sell in front of the town once word gets out, the impact of these numbers. We always hear reactively from people about their taxes going up, but I think it's time that more people paid attention to these numbers, both on the town level and school level. I think we're gonna have to really show more detail. And why not?
Can I make a statement?
Sure.
Just on a technicality, if you make a motion to read it, you can make a motion to present it as is without approving it, I believe. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't make a motion that you approving the first read, because then that's going forward as is. I would make a motion that they could present it as is for feedback before your vote on your first read, and that's just my 2 cents.
Well, that just came to me like it's like when we're in subcommittee and something comes back to us for first read.
Yeah.
We put our hands on it, but then it gets out for second read, and that's so. First read, I don't think we're doing any harm if we were to approve it through that.
There's 2 ways of looking at it, but I don't approve this to be presented to the town. I had questions a couple of weeks ago on it, and I think there was some opportunities to look a little deeper, and I just haven't seen any revisions yet.
Any more discussion? What do you guys think, Dean?
Well, I agree with Stephanie. I'm not prepared to approve this version of the budget. I just don't think we can. I think that the town had a significant increase recently, and it looks like this is calling for yet another increase. I just think we need to really look at it closer and try to come up with something better. I'd also like to see, according to the auditor, just more reserve, looking forward, looking into the future, doing some reserves as well.
I sent forward my minimum of what needed to be adjusted as a number. So
400.
it was a $490-something thousand, basically $500,000.
Yeah.
That was, for me, my minimum. I think it needs to be less. I had a figure lower than that, and I think it should be, but that's the minimum agreeable. But Mr. Chair, before we take any action, I just want to remind you that right now we're in a workshop. So if we're going to take any sort of vote, I recommend we move out of the workshop, put it on new business before we do anything. So
Right, well, it doesn't look like we're gonna be able to take a vote. It looks like we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board. But we at least ought to get some kind of consensus of a figure, so Barbara will have something to work with. And then when she comes back and shows you how bad it's gonna hurt, then we're gonna have to buckle up, see if that's okay.
okay, well, if you want to write down my lowest number that I like, my lowest proposal would be a $20,536,432 budget, which constitutes a 5.5% increase for the town. That's based off of the planning that was provided throughout the presentation, just plugging in the town numbers. That would be my lowest proposal. And then I also sent out a compromise proposal.
Do you mean lowest or highest? Like that's your highest that you would go for a number, or?
No, I think for the town, a 5.5% increase is, the other number I put out was a 9.5% increase, which is difficult. So I'd like the administration to look at both those proposals to see what the cost is. Because I often talk about cost. Cost in this is people. You're not gonna take a budget that 80% of it is payroll and not make a significant reduction and not have cost people. So what does that reduction result in? I think that's what we really need to look at.
So when you ask for us to consider a 5.5% overall increase for the town.
Yep.
At the school department, what does the expense budget look like? What's that increase?
An expense budget this is a cold medicine stubby pencil. My 5.5% increase to the town would be a total expense budget of $20,536,432.
And what percent increase or decrease is that over the previous year?
That would be almost a flat line. It would actually be a decrease over last year. And that's because of the use of reserves. When I say last year, it's our current year. Our current year is $20,592,000. So to make it a 5.5% increase to the town would actually be an overall decrease to our expense budget, which goes back to what was brought up, I think, by Mrs. Haggerty, of when we go back and look at our current, I've been corrected, I can't use the word execution, but our current utilization rate, we find that there's money there. So is a current budget of $20,592,565, is that where we should have been this year? It's not easy answers, they're hard questions. So it's something that Mrs. Haggerty brought up in her conversation, which we've seen in our finance reports that when we've started to recalculate our encumbrances, what we expect to have at the end of the year, we see that there will be money there.
I'm a little probably confused about, in terms of approving a budget, of whether, I really want to include reserves for a certain amount, and I'd really be a proponent of that. I think at some point we have to kind of get that undesignated balance up to 9% and start planning for the future. So I would support a budget that has reserves of some amount.
You mean adding to the reserve, Gene, or spending money out of the reserves?
Adding to it for the future.
That's going to make that situation worse. I mean, I don't disagree with you. I'd love to add some money to the reserves and to the, but.
Well, I agree with Brian in terms of just decreasing the number and seeing if we could also put some money away for reserves.
Okay, what else we got? What else you want Barbara to go with that number there and bring it back and show us what it'll look like? Is that the plan?
Yeah, I mean, really, I would push back because at the end of the day, last year, we were in this same situation and it came to us that it was absolutely bare bones. And there's been unexpected costs that have come up, to Brian's point, that our budget has been able to absorb. Where'd that money come from? I guess I really would like to see us get more accurate with some of the numbers. And there's several detailed questions that I've asked to support that.
Same with you, John?
That makes sense. I think that's where everybody's at.
I mean, I don't agree with it, but once we see the pain in this budget with those reductions, then we can move forward or backwards more.
Dr. Stern, it's unfortunate because you've inherited this. We're sitting with several of the same problems we were having to address last year. So for that, I apologize.
So let me articulate what I believe my direction is. So I have Brian's recommendation that I attempt to get us down to a 5.5 overall increase for the town, 9.5% increase as a backup, which, as he's indicated, indicates flat or decrease in our expense. over last year, which I find untenable, given that we have negotiated salary increases and given that we have health benefit increases. However, I will create a scenario that addresses that. I also know that in dropping us down to a straight 3% increase instead of the 4.05 that's been presented this evening, that comes out to about looking at $216,000 further cutting from the budget. So I'd like to come in with that as an alternative so that you have something else to look at that I believe would be more sustainable. I think one of the things the committee is forgetting, students, thank you for your time this evening. One of the things the committee is forgetting is that the lower we go with budget, the more difficult the future years become because we don't have enough to build on. But I can look at Brian's recommendation, and as I said, I would suggest that we look at perhaps at 3% if we're looking at reductions and understand where that is.
So like 80% of the budget is salary, correct? Pretty much, and those with the negotiated agreement would go up about 3% a year. Is that roughly accurate?
Each group is different.
This group, okay.
It's different. You can't just,
Is it really?
each group is different. Okay. It's just so we know, 3% would probably be approximately $21.2 million expense budget.
21.2.
We can't hear. Can you guys use your microphones?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You can't hear anything you're saying.
3% is approximately 21.2 versus a 21.4 where we're at right now. The hard thing that I had to understand was it's not the overall percentage increase that is the problem. It's the increase to the town, of which we're willing to push forward to the town. So 4%, 3% overall doesn't really make much of a difference. It's what that additional local funding.
2.4 million.
Yeah, I mean, it was the FY27 as currently written is an $8.1 million total local and a total add of 3.3 million. So what the local addition is that catches me, not the total expense budget. I think the total expense budget is somewhat reasonable. It's just the revenue portion of it makes it unpalatable.
Debbie, you had a question?
Is there anybody here among the town council members that can speak to where the budget process is with the town at this moment? Or you seem to be assuming that we know what that figure might be, and I don't know if we do.
We've just looked at our budget. The budget's prepared for the year, and I just spent 3 hours going over it with the town manager, and it's going to be presented at the next meeting.
Are you expecting, aside from the 25%?
Because all costs, like them, our personnel costs go up too. And then when you buy things, prices of everything have gone up. So there has to be an increase somewhere, or you have to start sacrificing services. And I was talking to Steve, and I agree. It's how much you want in services, and how much are you willing to pay for. And that's really where it comes down, is how much school are you willing to pay for, and how much services are you willing to pay for. And we've already cut the budget to the point where, we had planned capital expenses are way down. We're planning out 15 years. We're trying to keep expenses down, but you can't, because just like your budget goes up at home, so does the town's budget, and so does the school budget. There's some things you can't control.
Absolutely.
And then you have to say, well, which service do I want cut? That's really what it comes down to. I mean, you don't realize that until you get into the nuts and bolts of it, but that's what happens. everything goes up in cost, but people don't want to pay that cost, so then they have to cut back on services. You want to cut in the recreation department? Do you want to cut in the trash removal? It's keeping the town clean. Trimming back trees, making roads, fixing roads. I mean, it's just you have to make a choice somewhere along the line.
Thank you, Debbie. Go ahead.
Couple questions. Are there positions or projects that you guys are planning? Do you have anyone working on grants or seeing what's available that can be, whether it's lighting, it was something we talked about when I was on facilities. Is there anything that someone's proactively looking at in one of your subcommittees for grants that could offset some of this?
We are. We actually just received a free energy audit, and they're in the process of gathering data on our energy output, lighting, and they'll come back to us and we're under no obligation to do those projects, but we'll be able to take a look at what are the different recommendations, where might we secure the biggest savings for some outlay of expenditures.
Will that project also qualify you for grants?
We're going to wait and see what their recommendations are to us, and that'll be our next conversation.
Because I do know we paid for some of that through an engineering firm to do some of those assessments already, so you have some of that information. And then the other part is, I know that, if I recall, the budget is budgeted at 100%, so some of these positions that we're paying for, we're funding, are actually funded through federal, reimbursed federally. Is that...
Those positions are not reflected in this budget. They're not included in this budget. Those funds are accounted for.
So the staff, the special ed staff, or the staff that are paid through other means are not part of this.
Correct. If they're paid, this budget that you're looking at is the general fund budget only. It does not include federal funded employees within those numbers. Those staff are in their own funds where those revenues will come in through the reimbursement model.
Just so you know, Haley, some of those positions were annotated in the presentation. Just so you don't confuse it. It says, well, they were in the presentation, they're part of the general fund budget. Some of them were in the presentation, but it was indicated they were grant funded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead, Gene.
So I just want to try to figure out where we are now. I think Brian had made a suggestion, and I think Dr. Sargent said that his suggestion was likely untenable, but that you had potentially a different number that you wanted to propose, or did I mishear you?
So my recommendation, I can certainly work toward Mr. Venziano's request and provide the school committee an overview of what it would look like to get to a 5.5 increase. Percent increase for the town, and then a 9.5% increase for the town as a backup. I would also like to, for committee's consideration, instead of a 4.05% increase on expenses, offer the school committee a look at what it would be for a straight 3% increase, understanding what the outlook of the district would look like with that. So my suggestion would be for tonight that the committee consider approving the first draft with recommendations.
Okay, that sounds good. Haley, one quick thing. We had a capital improvement plan done by Brandy Bragg and Carpenter Associate. And basically for us, for the town to fix our 3 schools, it was roughly $12 million. So, but I don't see money going into this budget to help with that, but maybe someday. I'm okay with Dr. Sargent doing 2 or 3 scenarios to bring back to us, because I don't think it will hurt anything, right?
I guess
I'd like to have some options.
I guess the fact that we're able to do that, and it sounds like there's a willingness, comes back to why wasn't it presented to us with that?
Well, because as I said, the budget I presented tonight allows us to address our district goals. It doesn't eliminate any programs or increase class sizes. And so in order to meet the requests that are made tonight, I don't know that I'll be able to hold on to those things, but I'll certainly prepare it for your review.
And down to 3%, we feel isn't going to meet our goals?
I won't know that until I get to it, but as I said, the presentation I made tonight with a 4.05% increase meets our district goals that were approved in the fall. It still included some adjustment of staffing, but not to the extent that we were increasing class sizes or decreasing programming.
Any other discussion? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I suggest you don't make a motion until you get into the business.
Well, that sounds like a good idea. Okay, subcommittee reports. But, Brian, you want to give us, well, we've pretty much gone through all of it.
No, not really. I guess I move forward with some of it. We did.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, yeah, I didn't want to miss public comment. I think everybody's spoken enough. Go ahead, Brian.
We did have a finance committee meeting last week. We reviewed the cost center summary, which Mrs. Haggerty has already pointed out the highlight of that. But we do have an encumbrance line now, which is very good to work with, and we're at a 90.8%, which goes back to our earlier discussion about our utilization rate. So thank you, Mrs. Youngblood, for adding that into our report. It's very helpful. There's a flow chart, if you would, on the back of your report, and the flow chart is the year-to-date minus the last payroll that would have been the last week. It's just when the report was published. So you can see that the glide path doesn't align with the average, but that's because of that, the way that reporting was done. And we are, as a school department, on the same average glide path of utilization of funds as we've had throughout other years. We reviewed the budget, which was just discussed. The hot lunch shelving purchase was also discussed in length.
Brian, I'm sorry, would you mind using your microphone? It's hard to hear you. Sorry.
Can you hear me? So we reviewed a hot lunch shelving purchase, and we also asked for a budget update on the hot lunch program to see that there are appropriate funds in that account to pay for that request, and there are. And that report was sent out by Ms. Youngblood, and I think is on the link here. And there's funding, the hot lunch serving line purchase from RN Flag was also discussed. And those funds were, the balance sheet has been provided to indicate that we do have funds for that. So that was the bulk of what we discussed at the finance meeting, due to the fact that we really were looking at our budget. The audit was completed, an audit report was given last month, and that information has been posted. Energy audit, the energy audit is going forward, and that was also, it's been sent out. And the first steps of the energy audit have begun during the February break. Mr. Davis met with Steve Ferguson from the contractor to install loggers and other devices within the building to see our energy use. So that energy audit is moving forward. And then there's also been a look on the transportation side to have to work with Unite GPS to see if there can be efficiencies found this year in our transportation system on the manner in which we schedule our busing. So, pending any of your questions, it's the highs and lows, Jim? Did I miss anything, Tony?
No, it's good. Any questions? Okay, policy committee?
We met on the 26th of February. The policies that we're bringing forward for the second read are KFB, benefit activities, KH, solicitation in school. That references no commercial advertisements within the school. So those will, requests for that would come through the superintendent's office. KHB, advertising in school, distribution of non-school materials, and cross-references were put into place for all those policies to align.
Could you turn your microphone on, please?
Bringing forward for the first read consideration are GBGA medical examinations for employees after an injury. Policies GBGAA, bloodborne pathogens. There's a draft enclosed, and a control plan is also there. KDA, public information policy. KE, complaints. That was bringing that forward to align with the HEA agreement. Parent involvement in education is KB. KBF, parent involvement in Title I. This was revised to include elements E1 and E2, putting all of those three policies into one.
Any questions for Debbie or John? All set. Okay. Negotiations, nothing's going on there. Or,
We have ongoing. We have ongoing negotiation meetings. Our next meeting is scheduled, I believe, this week, Thursday.
Thursday?
And things are moving forward very positively to go on.
Perfect. Back to public comment. Would anybody like to speak?
Danielle Haggerty, I just have actually a question. I love the format where the links bring you right to the policies and stuff, but they're not always working for me. I don't know if it's operator error, or sometimes I get a message saying that I have to request access.
I had a couple that worked for me this afternoon and some that didn't.
Okay.
Like I said.
Okay, that was my question.
No, thank you.
Alex just walked out, but we won't put any pressure on you back there. We'll get to the bottom of it.
No, that's no problem. No line. Similar statement as Ms. Haggerty. Information isn't being listed. The policies aren't being listed. So when you guys are making amendments, you're not reading them. And I know it's exhausting to read that line by line, but because you don't have subcommittees open so we can read them and you're not posting them online, we have no idea what you're changing or what you're doing. And that directly affects us as parents, specifically, or caregivers. So we have no idea what you guys are proposing, you're abolishing or amending. You don't provide them printed either. And as well as you're having to gain access to a file that's public information is absolutely insane to me. No transparency, which is a huge issue. Something that Ms. Haggerty actually helped a lot back in the day, helped us advocate for the packets being posted online, which was very helpful and improved the communication and trust with our community. And that has since also gone away despite my best efforts to advocate for the agendas being available openly. Those links didn't work today. Every time I clicked it, it would go to a different page. That page, all the documents removed, all the agendas removed for the entire school's history. I have no idea what's going on. You guys had mentioned that we were, and I knew we were in the past, at risk of losing our insurance for all of the lawsuits that are going on. I heard that was going to go out for an RFP. I don't see that listed, and maybe I overlooked it. I was curious about the status of that. I see you did hire the JROTC person. I have a little concern that the school committee as a whole, it happened at the end of last year, but certainly anytime someone retires in this school district, I do not understand why we are not taking a moment as a school committee to acknowledge their service as our educators or I don't care if it's the janitor. Why aren't we taking a moment to give them a certificate and acknowledge the service that they've given to our to our community. That being said, I didn't hear any special recognition for that recent retirement of the JROTC instructor, and that's unfortunate.
Chair, I do believe we did acknowledge it in the previous meeting.
You gave him
yeah, I
you gave him
wasn't
something,
here,
and you
Not the last one, but I do believe we've acknowledged that.
Okay, all right, we can check into that.
I know in the past we did, retirement parties and such, but I just think it would be nice to get some sort of acknowledgement when someone's resigning or retiring, and thanking them for their service more than just a off-the-cuff statement. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you. Okay, business and finance, acknowledgement of a donation.
I move to acknowledge the donation of a dictionary for every third grader from Elks Club number 244.
Okay. Do we vote on that or just acknowledge it?
Just
Okay, perfect. And then a motion for B.
Move to approve the purchase of food service shelving from alternative sales.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
That was the shelving that was discussed at Finance Committee.
Yep. All those in favor? Perfect.
Any abstentions?
2 abstentions. Sorry, thank you, Stephanie.
All right.
All right, and number C.
Move to approve the purchase of food service serving line equipment for RM Flag.
Second.
Any discussion?
It was discussed at Finance Committee.
All those in favor? Perfect. 2 abstentions. All right, governance. Second reading policies. Move to approve. Can somebody do number 1? Oh, we're going to vote to abolish that one.
I move to approve the second readings as published.
Second.
Any discussion? Go ahead, big fella.
Well, in terms of KH, just that language again, and the decision of the superintendent or his or her designee regarding materials to be displayed and activities to be implemented shall be final. When you look at this particular policy, there's student organizations involved and clubs that students could be part of. And I just think it's a violation potentially of Code JI, the right to due process with respect to not only suspension or expulsion, but also an administrative decision which a student believes has injured his or her rights, the right to voice grievances. It's all listed in JI, so I just don't support the last line of that policy.
We had discussion about that in committee, and in understanding that the overall policy is about solicitation in the schools, what different activities will be happening in the schools. The committee felt that having the superintendent as the final decision maker was appropriate, and there was a desire not to bring those decisions up to school committee level for involvement.
Go ahead, Gene.
I got another one. So KHB, advertising in schools. I think I brought this up last time, but I don't know, I'm still stuck on the performance enhancing substances or dietary supplements language. And I don't know, I feel like there's a negative stigma to that. And when you look at statute, specifically Title 20A, Section 6621, it actually lists out performance enhancing substances that there's like a banned list. And it details the ones that are banned, and similar with dietary supplements. So I guess my only point here is it looks like this particular policy eliminates just every single one of them from being potentially advertised, perhaps because of the negative stigma, but the statute seems to have taken care of that, so I'm not it's not a big fight for me, but I just don't know if it's necessarily consistent with the statute. And it's not, by the way, one more thing, on the bottom it says 20A, MRSA section 6662, Maine Department of Education Rule 31. I looked through those and maybe I missed it, but I didn't really see a specific reference to either one of the performance enhancing substances or dietary supplements. They are mentioned in Title 286621. That's all I have. Thank you.
Brian, were you going to say something?
No, I mean,
So we also discussed this in committee and felt that rather than having the policy be silent in this area, even if it may be cited at the statute level, we felt that keeping that language in here, especially since these sorts of substances would not be available for purchase by anyone under the age of 18 anyway, and so to be clear in our policy and reinforce that language was appropriate.
Okay, any other discussion? So Jean, you feel strong enough to move it back to policy committee, or are you okay voting on this? You can vote against it if you want.
I'll just vote.
Oh, okay. All right, you guys all set to vote? All those in favor?
Is there any chance we can take them individually so I could vote specifically?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
so I'll amend my motion to
I'll retract.
retract my motion.
Okay.
To approve as listed,
All
or
right.
as presented.
Somebody want to make a motion to abolish policy KFB?
I move to abolish policy KFB.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? And now number 2.
I move to amend KH solicitation in the schools.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed?
I move to amend KHB advertising in the schools.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Number 4.
I move to amend KHC distribution of non-school materials.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. All right. First reading of policies.
I move to approve the amendment of GBGA medical examinations.
Can we take them in a group? It's the first reading.
Without comments, we can move right on.
Yeah, I'm all set to take them as a group if you want.
Did you make a motion to
He has
approve?
comments.
Oh,
He's got comments, so I move to approve
Okay, one at a
individually.
time, yeah.
I move
Number
to
1.
approve the amendment of GBGA medical examinations.
Okay. Second. Okay. Any discussion? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I gotta find it, sorry.
You are our resident lawyers, so take your time. We don't want to make a mistake.
So I guess the section here in red says medical examinations, number 4, as follow-up to an employee incident report by a staff member. I just got some significant concerns about that. I'd probably add the word like substantiated, like an employee's substantiated incident report. Because if it's just, like, I guess everybody gets along well with everybody, but there could be a situation where perhaps somebody's not getting along with somebody else and out of spite might, I don't know, you never know, and just having somebody being subject to a mental health examination. I think there's ADA issues. I think there would need to be some objective evidence that the school has reasonable belief based on objective documented evidence that an employee's mental health condition is, hindering their ability to perform their job functions. I think that this language could lend us into some problems, like discrimination against employees for suspected disability. I don't know, what are we basing this on, a gut feeling? So I think we really need to tighten up the language here, because that general language is troubling to me on that particular policy.
So perhaps, and again, because this is a first read, we can go back and clarify this. This is intended to be responsive to an actual employee incident report, and that's what it's called. So perhaps either linking the form or somehow clarifying, but this is intended for if an employee is injured on the job, and this goes back to OSHA standards and workplace safety standards. If an employee is injured on the job, there is a required report that they must fill out. And if they then need to seek medical attention as a result of that, that's why we wanted to include them in the medical examinations policy. But we can, and Joe, you can speak to this if you
It's
like.
the employee's first report of injury. So if an employee has had an injury, work-related injury, they file a first report of injury. If they feel the need to be seen, I therefore call Workwell for them to have a medical examination based on that first report of injury by the employee.
It says undergo examination of their physical and or mental health though, at the top. So I guess I don't understand the mental health part.
So we can talk further in policy subcommittee about that.
Mr. Chair, can I ask in general, because there's some valid points that have been brought up, at what point, remind me, do we as committee members get access to these minutes? Because there's always lots of valid questions that get brought up in our meeting about these. How can we make it more readily available so that committee members can ask questions ahead of time for the ease of the meeting and allow the public to be able to see them sooner? How soon after the subcommittees are minutes produced? And I apologize, I don't know right now.
So we met on Thursday afternoon, and the minutes were ready the next day and linked to the agenda.
So last Friday.
I mean, if you guys want, I guess you could, I mean, if none of them are time sensitive, you could skip a month before you have to vote on them, if that's an issue for you. And then if it's time sensitive, I'm sure Barbara would let us know, so, you know what I mean?
I just think we need more time to be able to review them and be able to ask these questions outside of the meeting even perhaps.
No problem, we'll just delay it for the next month.
Well, and that's why policies go through a second reading anyway, and sometimes it doesn't take 2 readings, sometimes it takes 3. But the idea is that it slows down the process so that everyone has time to understand the language, make suggestions for changes, and then vote when you're ready.
So is that okay with you guys? We'll delay a month and put it on the agenda.
I don't believe that's what Dr. Sargent just said. If it's a second reading.
Well, sometimes it's gonna be a third reading, so you're gonna delay it more than a month. I'm just trying to take care of Stephanie's situation.
Well, I'm just saying in general, it's
Right.
every single month, there's lots of valid questions that
Right.
come up. I'm not discouraging them, but it's not allowing us a lot of time either to review them.
So it would be helpful, I think, for our subcommittee to understand what questions are surrounding the first read policies so that we have direction when we read again.
Gene?
Let's go one more, then I'll stop.
What about past we did them individually, so we're still on medical examinations.
Oh,
Yeah, we're still on number 1.
okay.
I did have a point about that. Didn't catch this when we talked about it in subcommittee, but in point number 3, where we're talking about eligibility for FMLA, I'm wondering if our language should be updated to include the analogous program in Maine. I can't remember the name of it, but right in Maine, it just adopt a medical leave act of its own. So right, we should probably have the federal and state in there.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion to approve this with those 2 caveats going back to the policy committee?
Yep.
I made the motion to approve first reading of GBGA as we've discussed.
Okay. All right, any more discussion? All those in favor? Sorry, Debbie, John, get a little more work.
All right.
Okay, number 2.
Do you want to move forward as we're doing, Mr. Chair, or?
Well, I just do them all and let if Gene's got some.
Well, to help everyone out, I was only gonna comment on number 6 and not on the rest.
Okay.
All right, I move to amend GBGAA-R, bloodborne pathogen exposure control.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Well, the discussion that I was gonna say is I want to hear Gene's input, but I was thinking, how is there an opportunity to do it so that he's emailing his questions and getting answers ahead of time? Was what I was asking. Because his questions are valid. I don't want to discourage them. That's
No,
not my
I
point
mean
at all.
either.
Right, but
Then that's not done.
It's also a public meeting, and so this is the opportunity for any of our school committee members to voice their questions, and then we take it back and resolve it as we have, and come back with another try at the second read language, and if that meets the mark, then that gets approved, and if it doesn't, then we go back and we try again.
I just have one question in regards to this policy being bloodborne. Are the school nurses involved in the review of this document to make sure that?
They were.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, right? Okay. Any other discussion on number 2? All those in favor?
I think the motion's on number 3, isn't it?
I did, I skipped 2.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I went to GB dash.
All right, you're making it tougher, Brian, all right. Okay, so all those in favor of number 3?
Now
Anybody
I'm back,
opposed of number 3?
now I'm back to 2,
All right.
GBGAA bloodborne pathogens. I move to amend.
Okay. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. And now number 4.
I move to amend KDA, public information policy.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I think that was one that I did have. Under KB. Nope, it's down the road. Never mind.
Okay. All those in favor? Number 5.
Move to amend KE, complaints.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Good. Now number 6.
Move to amend KB, parent involvement in education.
Second.
I just bring our attention to paragraph K, encourage parent involvement through PTA groups, parent councils, and in a removed school committee. I would like to have parents involved in school committee. So encourage them to attend our meetings and maybe run for a seat.
Okay. Nobody's that crazy, are they?
Only once.
Gene, yeah, go ahead, buddy. I'm waiting for you for number 6.
Well, just a minor, I wonder if this should say parent or guardian throughout, because I think the next policy does say that, but this one seems to eliminate guardian.
It definitely should.
That's why I have this one.
Okay. All right, everybody all set to vote on this one with that? With that change? Any other discussion on it? All those in favor? Perfect. 7, 8, 9, or do you guys want them individual still?
Move to approve policies listed 7 through 9 as published.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Hey, we made it through it. All right, personnel.
Move to approve the superintendent's recommendations to employ Mike Knight Herman High School JROTC Assistant Army Instructor.
Second.
Any discussion?
Good guy.
All those in favor? Great. Oh, Haley, yeah, sure.
Can you just clarify for me, because it was asked of me earlier and I just don't know the information. Is there, I can't recall how that class works for credit, but it was brought to a parent brought to my attention that, is this still going to be qualified as a history credit? There's some issue with it not being a qualified credit anymore. Is anything changing with it still being a history credit? Can you speak to that?
I would refer that parent back to the course bulletin, which is online. I don't believe we made a change, and it should be addressed in there.
Yeah, I think they went to guidance too, and they couldn't address it, so I just wanted to.
Okay.
Did you get a full vote on that, Mr. Chair?
Oh, I didn't get a vote.
You did?
Yeah, okay, great. C.
Move to approve the superintendent's recommendation for the following 2025-26 Herman High School co-curricular athletic positions
Second.
as listed.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, somebody told me the basketball team got an award. I'll let you announce it.
Sportsmanship award and the Big East Conference.
Yeah.
They accepted that Sunday, looking good.
They had a great season. They ran into one team. They just couldn't seem to handle
Figure them out.
No.
Plus, Lila Ryan won an award in the state for a student, athlete.
Scholar athlete.
Student athlete with.
You want to come up here and announce that?
Oh, I can't even get it out of my mouth.
Yeah, that was also in the Big East Conference.
She won an award for being, for having very good grades and being an excellent student.
Perfect. They had a great year, the girls did, I thought. I went to a lot of the games. They represented Herman very well, the girls did.
But that wasn't announced tonight, and I was meant to suggest that.
Well, thank you.
Maybe next week, next time.
All right, D, probationary.
Move to approve the probationary and continuing contract teachers as listed.
Second.
Any discussion?
Assume they've all been recommended by their principals.
All those in favor? Okay. Now we get down to new business, right? Because now it's not none, since we got something. Yeah,
Just
to approve draft of the budget, yeah.
in the minutes packet that was published online, I think the high school did report on all those accolades. So all the tremendous state track accomplishments, all the scholar athletes, all conference performances. That's all in there.
That's online.
That's online.
Is it online?
Yeah, it's in the minutes packet. So
I saw this in the.
yeah.
I know the track was very successful.
Oh yeah,
Really good.
But for anyone who's curious, it's a good read.
Okay, so now we need a motion for our budget. Barbara came up with a pretty clean one, I thought. Would you like to repeat it again?
The recommendation is that the school committee approve a first draft of the fiscal year 27 budget with recommendations.
Can somebody make that motion for me?
I move to approve the first draft of the fiscal year 27 budget with recommendations.
Okay. Second? Okay. Any discussion?
Do we need to specify the recommendations or just discuss?
I think we already have, and then if Barbara comes up with a second option, I think she's gonna come up with more than 4 options. As a starting point, guys, it doesn't,
My question is, we're approving the first draft for the town. The town will see this now before we do. Which is,
Not necessarily. We have a finance
We have a finance committee before that, and we have ways of doing one-way communication with our school committee members so that they'll see what we intend to bring forward.
Would there be any value in, I mean, we did it last year in regards to budget, having a special budget meeting to get back on all this stuff. Is there any value in us doing that so that we can have it in a timely manner?
We can certainly consider that. I'm going to need time, first of all, to go through some calculations to see if I can land at the places you requested.
Is it going to the town next Thursday?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm hung up on. If we had another look at it before it went to the town, I would vote yes without reservations because I trust Dr. Sargent. But with it going before the town without us, it's going before the town council on Thursday without us actually saying yes or no, I think that's problematic. I hate to schedule another meeting, but we really should, if we're going to send this to the town, we should have at least an agreement on it. Or maybe we won't agree on it, but whatever goes forward to the town has been, we know what it is.
Well, it would have to be Wednesday night, right? Can't be Tuesday night. Can't be tomorrow night. You've got to get 24-hour notice.
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday, I think, is the next town council meeting.
Oh, I thought it was this Thursday, next Thursday.
Yeah, I don't think not that I don't think they're capable, I don't think it's reasonable to give the administration 24 hours to revamp all this. So I think it's next Thursday is the town council meeting that we should reconvene prior to that.
All right, let us do a little bit of work on our end, and we'll come back to you and see if there are dates that work prior to the town council meeting.
I'm not available, Chair, next week, so. Move forward, however.
Okay, any other discussion?
Well, then,
Because then we're going to vote, right?
I assume you want to vote, but it's the same tripping point for me. What are we voting on if we're not saying that we're going to come back prior to the town council meeting?
Or we're voting on Barbara to get amendments to bring back to us and make it so we can.
Yep, so is part of that motion to include, we will have a meeting prior to the town council meeting?
Yep.
Undetermined. Date to be determined.
Right.
Yeah, okay, all right. Prior to the town council meeting.
Well, it's going to have to be prior to.
Well, technicalities.
All right. And
I'm just saying you could be down to 4 votes and you could end up with a split vote
What's your latest available date?
this week.
Friday? Is that what you mean by this week?
No, not Friday, Thursday. I mean, you can move forward next week without me. I'm just saying you'll be down to vote.
What do you think? Can you have everything done by Thursday?
I think we start with approving the first draft recommendations. We have our direction. It'll let us get started. We'll be able to come back and share that with you and then offer up meeting dates, and we'll see where we have the most people available.
All right, you guys all ready to vote? All those in favor? 2 abstentions.
We work on our budget on Thursday.
You got enough
Thank
all
you.
yourself. Okay, I think we're at the end, aren't we? Didn't miss anything, did I?
Motion to adjourn,
Okay.
8:50.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. I'll accept that unless noted. Okay.
So according to the program studies,
It's not enough to go retire. Take me to garage and say, "Oh, it's good time."
Isn't that
Yeah.